Alright, so it is March 1st, which means it is time for a What I Read in February video. So the first book I read was The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. I rated it a 4.5. I learned a lot about the treatment of migrant workers in California at that time that I didn't really know anything about before. It takes place during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl era, if you're wondering. There was amazing character development, and it had an amazing storyline. And as you can guess from me saying it was took place during the Great Depression, it is a historical fiction. The next book I read was Don't Forget to Write by Sarah Goodman Confino. This was also historical fiction taking place in 1960. It had amazing characters, a great story. However, I wish whoever made the synopsis for this book would have said it took place in 1960. Because I went to the library. I was trying to do like historical fiction, non-historical fiction, historical fiction, non-historical fiction, which is kind of how most of the time I tend to read my books. And I just got done reading The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. And then there wasn't one before that I read. That was historical fiction, so I just read a historical fiction. So it was kind of annoying, but it was really a good book, but it just annoyed me that it didn't tell me on the synopsis, which I know that is not the author's fault. I know the whole publishing world and how someone else makes a synopsis and the cover art and all of that kind of stuff. So, the third book I read was A Quote for Christmas by Sandra Dallas. I don't think I've ever read a book that specifically took place at Christmas, like especially in the title. However, it really mentions Christmas like once in like one chapter, and it's just called The Christmas Quote or whatever. That's just what it's referred to. It's not all taking place at Christmas time. I rated it 4 stars. It had great characters. However, it was slower paced than I wanted it to be. And that did kind of, I guess, quote unquote, annoyed me. Because for it being a shorter book, I kind of expected it not to be as slow paced as it was. So then, therefore, I ended up reading 3 historical fictions in a row, which I didn't really want to do, but I didn't intend to do, which, oh well, I already did it. So, my 4th book that I read is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. I was not big on this book. I rated it a 3. It was contemporary fiction, also a thriller. It's like she wanted the main character to be so stupid. It reminded me of like a stereotypical horror movie where they're just so stupid and like they're told, don't open that door, and they're like, I'm gonna open that door because I was told not to do that. That was like every single time in this book. And I'm like, it's kind of hard for me to want you to not die at this point. Sorry, but it is. She had very little to no personality. And like her only trait, I guess, is like she's just anxious. That was like it. She's just anxious. That was all. And I'm like, okay. And something that kind of made me think, or like it reminded me about cruise ships in general, I honestly Going on a cruise ship, the idea of it kind of freaks me out. Not kind of, very much so. Because there's a show called Cruise Ship Killers, a true crime show about people that have been murdered and flown off of ships, cruise ships. So, fun. And then it also makes me think of this one true crime story I heard about. I don't remember the girl's name, but this happened in either 1996 or 1997. This one girl, her family, I say girl, she was like in her 20s, I think, maybe late 20s. Her family's like, you really need to go on a cruise, let's just go on a cruise as a family. She was very apprehensive. They went on the cruise. I think it was somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere in that area. And there was a point where it was like a bar scene situation, and they're dancing and having a good time. And this man who goes as, quote, Yellow, is I guess his pseudonym, comes up to her and is like, dancing, they're flirty or whatever. She's never seen again. And it's assumed that she's been trafficked ever since. No one knows if she's alive. There was a supposed photo that came about I think 10 years later. Their family are pretty sure that wasn't her, and I'm just like, that's just terrifying. I don't think I would ever want to go on one. The next book I read, sorry Luna, I made her jump, was Yellow Crocus by Layla Ibrahim. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This was another historical fiction. This month was heavy with historical fiction. I rated it 4 stars. It had amazing character development. It was a great storyline. It takes place over like 20 years, and it takes place like almost right before the Civil War, pretty much. It really shows the tragedy of slavery, and I like how it's not really glossed over, and it shows the harsh realities. And for important moments in history like that, I like that in a book, because I don't like anything being glazed over. And then the final book I read was The Lost Manuscript by Kathy Bonadin. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a French surname, so I don't know. I rated that 3 stars. It felt like it was trying really, really hard to be profound, and I'm like, okay, I hate that. Like, stop, please don't try too hard with something like that, and it's not going to happen. It's going to be obvious. It was written in, like, letter format and short stories, or short letters for characters to each other. It was also too wordy, which I think also goes into the whole trying really hard to be profound, because I think that was a part of it. She was, like, going on these long soliloquies, and I'm like, okay. But because it was in a short letter format, it was a fast read, so I was like, I can read it. And it'll give me an L for the alphabet challenge, so I'll take it. And then I did end up giving up on one book this month, and that was Bellies by Nicola Dinan. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Excuse me. So, with that, I will mention it was a LGBTQIA plus book. I gave up reading, I think, 2 pages in. The weird thing it was doing, and I don't really know why, it was like you didn't know if the main character was thinking or speaking the way it was written, and I'm like, if that's like this now, no. I'm not putting up with this. I'm not dealing with it. Nope. So that was why I gave up on that one. And I don't know if I said this, but Lost Manuscript was a contemporary fiction. So I ended up with 4 historical fiction, like I said, heavily historical fiction this month. I guess Don't Forget to Write's also kind of a romance too. 1 thriller, and then the last book being contemporary fiction also. And I am doing Read Through the Alphabet Challenge by author. So this month I covered the letter F with The Four Winds, the letter D as in dog with Don't Forget to Write, Q with A Quote for Christmas, Y with Yellow Crocus. I will forever wonder if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, I know, I can look it up, but I didn't. And then L with The Lost Manuscript. I also checked off book with a number in the title, Woman in Cabin 10. And my favorite color on the cover for me, that's yellow, with Yellow Crocus. And all I need left for the extras is a 1-word title. So I also ended up doing Read Every Day and for February for American Cancer Society this month, and I did actually end up achieving that, so that was cool. So the highest rated book was 4.5 with The Four Winds, and then 2 books took the spot for 3 stars with Woman in Cabin 10 and The Lost Manuscript. So far I've done 6 books last month and 6 books this month, so I say I'm doing good. So we'll see how many I've read in March.